Hi, everyone. It's great to have you here. I'm Tracy Yankin, and I'm passionate about helping healthcare leaders stay ahead of the curve when it comes to new technologies by simplifying IT concepts and new technology into business-oriented language. So whether you're struggling with data initiatives, trying to make informed decisions about new technology, or just dealing with the constant changes in the market, I got you covered. Now, for those of you who've joined us in previous sessions, it's great to see you back. For others who have not been here before, we've been doing a summer series around generative AI in the market and in healthcare. So welcome, and I'm glad that you could join us today. We know that generative AI is at the cusp of healthcare transformation, but we also know that it does not come without its pitfalls. And so two key challenges that we are going to talk about today are data privacy and the inherent biases that can be found in generative AI and the models that we use. Now, we do know that there are vast quantities of data required to fine-tune AI models, and that inherently poses some risks. Now, with healthcare data, we can often encompass having detailed genetic sequences. We hold personal medical histories and other sensitive data information. We're all very familiar around that specially protected data. That could be alcohol and drug use. It could be mental health evaluations. It could be sexual health, right? We've got these other implications that we're gathering all this data. And there is, as we're gathering it and we're training these models, there is a danger of potential misuse, right? It's a risk, it's a challenge. And our job is not to say, no, we can't do it because we know that the technology is moving forward. Our job as a leader is to say, how do we turn this, how do we mitigate risk, number one? And number two, how do we turn this challenge into an opportunity for us to better our processes, to become more efficient? How does this affect our operations? And I've talked about this for weeks before. You can go back, you can look, read, and listen to what I've said. Now, the second thing I want to talk about the second part of this whole thing about having all of this volume of data is that there was a detailed study from the BMC of medical ethics in that journal, which is one of the ones I really like to read too. Just that sheer volume of data, right, that we need to effectively train our AI models, it does pose a severe risk to patient privacy. And NTT Data also did a white paper on this too, and they were stressing the imperative nature of establishing just strict data handling and storage protocols. Now, the depth and the detail of this patient data that is being used in AI models, again, is and can become a vulnerability. These two studies are great. I would encourage you to go back and read these and think about how what they're saying can be applied in your organization. Now, let's talk about the other consideration, and that's biases, right? Historical healthcare data hasn't always been fair or it hasn't been representative. And we know this, right? We've just had a couple of real big court cases come down the pike around patient consent and use of patient data. Now, according to the National Center for Biotechnology Information, the NCBI, when AI learns from skewed data, it might inadvertently continue the biases inherent in that data, and that can potentially affect the quality of care for underrepresented groups. And the NCBI study also highlighted specifically historical, racial, gender, and socioeconomic disparities in healthcare data. And when it's perpetuated and amplified by the AI, it can lead, again, to those potential inequalities for underrepresented populations. And it does undermine the fundamental medical tenet that we all try to follow, and that's equal care for all. Very important for us, right? It's part of our mission, it's part of our vision, it's part of our values. So, how do we safely navigate this AI revolution? And I'm going to say it, and I've said it before for many weeks, that transparency should always be our compass in our organizations and in our missions. How do we do that? Now we're going to take those challenges, those two that I just talked about, the biases that are inherited and the patient transparency piece, the data privacy piece of this, and we're going to talk about how to be transparent. Number one, we need to be very clear in our communication, and we need to be obtaining informed consent because these are fundamental steps towards building trust. Patients should be crystal clear on how their data is used. Doesn't mean that every patient's going to read the privacy policies, doesn't mean that every patient's going to understand what's there, but we need to be transparent and clear, putting it out there so that patients understand how that data is being used. Secondly, we need to be doing regular checks, bias audits, third-party evaluations, and we of the data that we're receiving in our organizations. And we also need to be consistently retraining the AI models when it comes to data acquisition and processing. So, how do we keep that AI's potential bias in check? It's by doing this refining of the data that we're getting in and retraining our AI models. So, in summary, while AI holds massive promise for healthcare, it's essential that we tread with caution. Doesn't mean, again, we stop doing what we're doing, we don't stop innovating. We tread with caution because we want to ensure that we never compromise on trust or fairness when it comes to the work that we do. Now, there's a third lever here, and everybody's probably thinking, like, where does regulatory fit into this? Well, we're going to talk about regulatory next week and the regulatory landscape that's actually occurring now at the federal and the state level. And we're going to talk about governmental oversight when it comes to AI, because we want government to be a partner and to come alongside industry, not to be a barrier to industry. So, how do we have those conversations out there? How do our compliance departments start to advocate for the use of these technologies, especially generative AI, but also showing that we can protect our um, our stakeholders, our patients, our members, and our customers in the market. So very excited about. I should say that regulatory involvement is needed. And we know that generally the market doesn't move until regulations start to get put in place, right? They give us our carrots and our sticks, they give us guide rails. So it's going to be very interesting next week to talk about what this looks like right now. And I believe me, it's going to change over the next year, just like the technology continues to change and evolve. So thank you again for joining us, and I'll look to see you guys again next week.